In this video, we're taking a look at the i24 Tenda AC1200 Wave 2 ceiling access point. We're kind of do a head-to-head against the Ubiquiti UniFi nanoHD access point. Each of these are Wi-Fi 5 access points, which offer the 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz band. And in specific, the Tenda offers up to 300 megabits per second on the 2.4 band and up to 867 megabits on the 5 GHz band. The major difference here is this one is $36.99 and this one is $179. So the point of this video is, well, I guess a little bit of background. As usual in America, my marriage is ending in divorce, so I'll be forced to move out and sell this house. And I'm going to remove my existing UniFi equipment, which would leave a hole where the current one is. So I figured I might be able to add a little bit of value to the new homeowner by adding in this Tenda in its place to cover the hole and possibly provide full coverage to this 2,448 square foot house. As you can see up there, the existing access point is roughly 13 feet off the ground and roughly the center of the house. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to take my Google Pixel 6 and go from room to room, and you'll see the map here on the screen now, and we'll take measurements of the UniFi system from each room, and then we're going to install the Tenda and take measurements again from each room to compare the results. Typically, you are provided with a very cheap router from your ISP. They have no incentive to give you an expensive one. The point of the service is they're providing you a service. They're not trying to provide you with equipment. Some providers now offer the Amazon Eero series. I know Frontier does that now, and that is a viable option for many. It's the Amazon is a very good router itself. I have used it before. But for someone like me in the tech field, most of us go with the Ubiquiti UniFi system because it offers a lot of features beyond just what it can do as far as coverage. For regular consumers, though, that don't need to handle hundreds of devices and have all these extra VPN features and all that, then you might be able to get away with just spending $36.99 to provide full coverage to your house. So we're going to find that out. I haven't opened this up yet, so before we get into that, let's open up the box and see what we get inside. It's worth pointing out that while the nanoHD could operate on its own, most people will have a UniFi Dream Machine unit that would plug into, which would drive the cost up even more beyond the $179. The only thing that we're going to be adding to this setup today, in addition to what's in the box should include a DC power brick, so you can power this unit without it, but because I have a very high ceilings with no AC power up top, we will be adding in a POE injector, and we'll cover what this does later. But that would bring the cost up another $15.99 as far as what we're using today. All right, so it looks like we have an installation guide. This is probably the technical support documents. Supplier's declaration of conformity. I have no idea what that is. GNU General Public License Notice and a quick installation guide. And finally, the unit itself. Very simple, a very cheap plastic and very light overall. But the thing that we care about here is that it does have a mount attached to it. So we'll be able to attach this mount in the same place that my existing one was to cover up the hole that I made to put that one there. On the bottom of this is a single port where you could put PoE or just a regular Ethernet port that would plug into your router. And on this side should be mounting hardware and the power brick. So if you have AC power nearby, you can just plug in this as you would any other typical equipment. But for my setup today, again, because this is mounted up so high, we'll be adding in this PoE injector. Let's go ahead and open this up to kind of give you an idea of this part of it. The nanoHD also comes with a POE injector. So here's the AC cord for the POE injector. I'll go ahead and show you the POE injector itself. Get a little bit closer here. There are two ports on the POE injector. One would be one that goes to your ISP router. It will plug into the data in, and then on the data out port, you plug this cable into the blue Ethernet port on the access point, and then you don't need to plug in the power cord. So essentially, this is replaced by this. In my opinion, this makes setup a lot simpler. Before getting out the ladder, start out with setting up everything here on the ground. You don't want to be up on the ladder messing with this stuff. So as far as the setup, we have our ISP router, and we have this blue cable plugged into one of the 4 LAN ports here. Be sure not to use the one for broadband because this one isn't providing any service to anything. This is the one that provides service from your ISP to your ISP router. So this blue cable plugged into port 1 is going into the data in port on this POE injector. And this POE injector will be plugged into AC power and provide data and power out of this port. So this cable is going over to the actual access point. And you'll see on this access point, the power is 12 volts, 1 amps. That's when you're using this. But since we're using this POE injector, we do not need this whatsoever. In fact, you should not plug it in. So as far as setup, we also have the username and password here. So we're going to get this powered on and set this up from here on the ground before we get on the ladder and set things up completely by mounting it and all that. You'll see the username is admin, the password is admin, and the IP address that we go to set things up is 192.168.0.254. So let's get into the setup portion. Okay, because this is an access point and not a true router, the setup is a little bit more complicated, so you should definitely set this up before mounting it. The first step will be to actually use the power adapter that was included and plug it in directly. Do not even plug it into the internet yet. Once it turns on, you'll be able to find the Tenda access point. We need to open up our network and sharing center because we actually need to change the adapter settings of the device that we're using. Because this is an access point and not a router, it is not going to assign an IP address to this device. So in order to get around that, we go to our network connections, find our Wi-Fi adapter, open up the properties, go to the Internet Protocol version 4 TCP IP option, click on properties, and again, this is not a router, so we're not getting an IP address automatically, so we'll need to assign one. We're going to do 192.168.0. Let's do 2 in this case. The subnet mask will be 255.255.2.5.0. Our default gateway won't matter too much, but we'll put that in as 0.254. And for DNS, we won't be using it for this case here, but we'll go ahead and fill it in as the usual Cloudflare DNS and hit OK. Hit close. And now, if we go to our status, we should see that we are connected. And we have an IP address on this machine of 192.168.0.2. And we're going to try to load up the admin interface on 192.168.0.254. So if you don't set your IP address manually, you won't be able to access this page. So be sure to do that first. The default username and password is admin and admin. We won't save that for now. Okay, for a quick setup, we are choosing, it was already the default here for 2.4, default is AP. We're changing the SSID to something else besides Tenda. I'm changing to the Spanish word for mermaid. I'm changing the security mode to a WPA PSK. We're going to choose both TKIP and AES, and we're setting the key to something that isn't super, it's still pretty simple, but hard enough to where it's not simply guessed unless you know the person. We'll hit save there. We're changing the SSID, so as we save, it should get rid of that SSID. So for the LAN setup, we're going to change this to DHCP. All right, so we changed the LAN to DHCP on the access point, the Tenda access point, and we've plugged that into our actual router. So now this is no longer going to be valid because the router that I'm plugged into has a different IP address range. So be sure to go back to your adapter, go to properties, go to IPv4 here, go to properties, set this back to automatic, hit OK on all that stuff. We've connected back to the Tenda wireless. And as you can see now, the internet is actually working. I can actually do a speed test. But that's fast enough for most people. The latency is still good at 4 milliseconds, and our connection is fast according to Google. So let's continue with this setup. Because we turn on DHCP, we got a different IP address from the actual router that we're plugged into, because keep in mind this is an access point, not a router, so the router assigned the access point an IP address of 10.40. Yours will be different, and then of course we can log into here because we didn't change the username and password yet with admin. So we're back into the admin panel. So very strange, we have multiple SSIDs here that we can choose from. The one that we're connected to right now seems to be B0. So if we wanted to change that, we could change that here. If If we wanted to change the password, we would change that here, and then hit save. Okay, so we have access to everything and we can connect. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and install this where the old access point used to be. And we'll mess with this later if we need to change anything here. So let's start by removing the existing access point. Let me hop up on the ladder here. Always be sure to get the proper ladder for this. My ladder is a little bit on the short side for doing this. I had to go just past the recommended height. It'll be worthwhile to look up your particular model, but in my case, I just twist this off. The cable is hidden back behind it. I remove the cable. We'll leave this cable here, and I'll need to remove this mounting plate so we can mount the new one. This existing Wi-Fi access point is extremely hot. Wow. Didn't know that this thing produced that much heat. But it's been running reliably for about 2 or 3 years now. So no complaints about the UniFi access point. Again, we're only replacing it because I have to move. I simply use drywall screws, so this moves pretty easily. And now you might be able to see that the existing access point, caused some damage as far as the wall here. So I need to replace it with another access point, which is what we're doing. I'm just going to reuse these screws that I was already using. Ooh, I need to look at the gap. So putting in this hardware, where do I need to run the cable? I need to be cautious of that. So I'll hop down and look at the access point with the mount. There is no gap to allow the cable to go through these holes. This mount will need to go above the hole in the wall there. With the UniFi access points, they leave a gap within the unit so you can hide the cable. This one is not. So for appearance sake, this one is not as good as UniFi for many reasons. So we'll still get this as close as we can here to still hide that gap. Okay, that seems to be held in place pretty good. So now let's get the access point. So we plug in the access point. So you can scrunch up that cable any and slide it into place. The green light lets you know that it has power and it's on. And now the green light is flashing, so we should be able to connect to that access point using the laptop. When this house was sold back in 2020, they did a Matterport scan of the house, and I was able to do a top-down view of that to draw up the schematic. It has a lot more than necessary for this video, but each room of the house is labeled, and as I said, I went from room to room and took signal strength measurements of the UniFi, and then I went around and took signal strength measurements of the Tenda on the 2.4 gigahertz band. I did not do the 5 gigahertz band. And switching over to the results, if the Tenda had a better signal strength, I changed the label to orange, and if it was the UniFi, I changed it to blue. And in one case, the bedroom number 3 there, the signal strength was actually the same for both of them, so I didn't change the label. But as you can see, the Tenda actually did surprisingly well. For a budget router, it's excellent, but of course the drawback is it's incredibly difficult to set up. So I would not recommend this to anyone who doesn't know very much about networks. You know, if you can, just get the Eero router from your provider if they offer that option. It's a lot easier to set up, and you know, of course, I would still be sticking with the UniFi devices because I do take advantage of all the extra features that they offer. But if you don't need the features and you have a good understanding of networks, then the Tenda is an excellent option to get really good signal strength throughout an entire 2,448 square foot house. As I said, I will be selling this house soon, but if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. I will have access to this Tenda for about another 2 weeks or so to answer any questions, but after that I can still do my best. And with that, thank you for watching.